All right. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Kingdom of the Kael. Yes, this is one of my custom D&D campaigns. The people below me are the ones that are crazy enough to entrust the lives of their characters to me. Yeah, lots of stuff has been happening. I unfortunately had to deal with some IRL stuff, so we've been on a hiatus for a couple weeks. So let's just dive right back into it. So to kind of bring us all back, after traveling through time, apparently, and across the world, Kata and Fade were able to come back with a little bit more knowledge. And the rest of you guys were able to meet up with them and find out a few things, like the connection between Fade and that Kraken had been severed, but it had left the Dark Lady a little weakened to doing it. After clearing up any other projects you had, you guys got ready and wind walked your way to the south to check out this cave that's been discovered, with a gateway similar to the one you guys found that sent you to the sunken city of Dam Doral. You decided to go down there to help them open the portal, and then come right back to figure out your next move. On the way there, you saw a group of warriors you didn't quite recognize fighting two very bizarre-looking creatures. You went down, and through the cunning use of banishment, totally ruined the DM's really cool fight that he made, and were able to slay them and had kind of a confrontational, argumentative conversation with the leader of that group, who kept calling you guys heathens, I think it was. Or something, or pagans. There we go. He didn't seem like a very nice person, but he was a dragon knight, and said some kind of strange things about the dragons you guys were seeing, and then flew off in a huff of indignation.
Yeah, we weren't really expecting the douchebag Inquisition.
Yeah.
Who does?
So after that, you guys kind of went back into your mystical tavern, and Avok kept getting more and more angry, to the point where his axe had been destroyed, and he started breaking more things, and suddenly realized that he could manifest these spikes that would protrude out of them. You could kind of direct their growth into makeshift weapons. And so for the rest of the night, until he passed out, Avok was experimenting.
Yep.
And that brings us back to the present in the game. So starting off, Avok, your head is kind of pounding, and you're surrounded by just black. You're not really sure what's going on. Your head is really fuzzy. As you start to come to your senses, you can feel something sharp poking you in the face. And as you kind of strain yourself and figure out, you can feel the wood of your room on your face. And obviously, there's some shard of something that your head is resting on.
Ow.
As you slowly kind of lift yourself up and look around, you're not sure where this headache is coming from. It's kind of like a hangover, though slightly different. The pain is shifted a little bit. As you look around your room, you see these shards of what looks kind of almost like bone, along with shards of what used to be your furniture all around you. As you try and figure out everything that happened, you do faintly remember really pushing yourself hard to the point of exhaustion and passing out. You have no idea how much time has passed, though. So what would you like to do? You do see in the corner of your room is the shaft of your axe of wounding, with the blade itself still shattered, but the shaft itself is still intact.
Okay. What was I? Okay. I need food. I'm gonna walk out of my room and
You
get some food.
smell the familiar scent of breakfast in the tavern awaiting you in your kind of meeting area.
Nom nom.
Good. Kata and Willow, you guys wake up as well. And by the time you get up, you can already hear Avok just tearing into breakfast.
Morning.
Morning.
Ready?
I guess I don't know. Like, I just woke up.
It's okay.
You guys can see some like marks, like imprints on his face from him lying on the floor all night.
Ooh.
Like, have you ever seen someone that slept on like their glasses or something?
Yeah, not like you or I have any experience with that, right, Jody?
Of course not. It's not how I broke a pair of glasses. What are you talking about? So the rest of you, I'm assuming, sit down to eat with him as well? A few minutes later, Fade comes out, still a little bit lost in thought with everything that's happened recently. And seems like he'll probably won't be speaking for the next few hours.
Okay, what else is new?
Any prep work or anything you guys want to do before you start heading out?
I assume that Gimwald is staying with us.
Yeah, I was going to deal with that in just a few seconds here. Anything you want to do before you deal with him? All right. So as you guys are kind of eating your fill, you hear this kind of somewhat weak voice. Hey, hello?
Yes?
Yes?
Oh, and you hear him start coming up the stairs. I wasn't quite sure where everyone was.
I'm sorry, you must have gone downstairs instead of...
Oh,
She said coming over and leading him down the hall.
sorry.
Oh, do you mind if I join you?
Not at all. Please do.
So
Go ahead.
comes over and he kind of looks at the table, which is a mixture of like, hot meats and breads and rolls and a little fresh fruit. And you watch him just very carefully kind of look at everything and then just pick up a single piece of fruit, sniff it, and very tenderly bite into it before realizing it's Satan. Excuse me, and just chowing down.
If there's anything else you'd like, just ask. Anything to be required.
Oh, I'm
Within reason, of course.
perfectly fine with my fruit. I generally am not a big breakfast person. You've been quite, and he just keeps looking around, quite hospitable to me. This is quite fascinating, to be honest. We have a few magic users among us, but, let's just say the Eladrin would not have been happy with us practicing magic like this.
No. I'm well aware.
Well, we must have you down sometime to do a lecture on it.
I would love that.
The wizards would find it very entertaining, and the sorcerers would probably listen for a minute and a half, maybe two. And then go back to playing with their fireballs and trying to turn them green.
I've not met many sorcerers, so I would welcome it.
And he continues eating, and then you see him get this kind of bizarre look on his face. He just kind of sits back.
Something wrong?
Well, it's just that Dragon Knight fellow. He seemed rather odd, didn't he?
Yeah.
Odd and rude, yes.
Well, rude is a way of life in the Kael Isles. Kind of get used to it when you get to my age, but I just never been called a pagan before. And he said it with so matter-of-factly, like it was just common knowledge. It was very, very strange.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't care, honestly. He can go fuck himself.
You did say that.
Well, my only worry is if he has the if his people have the control of dragons that he claims they do, who's to say they're not behind this invasion we've had recently? I mean, I understand the Eladrins were not my favorite masters by any stretch of the word, but I don't think I really want to trade Eladrin for dragon masters, to be honest.
No.
I do not think they with the dragons. Well, not Not the ones that invaded, anyway.
It still is quite coincidental, though, that his culture is so fixated on dragons, and they just happen to show up en masse after not being here for hundreds of years. That's all I'm saying.
Hmm.
You may be right. May have to keep this in back of mind. Just in case we run into them again.
Let's
Well,
hope not.
if we do, I'm sure Avok here will work as a very fine negotiator for our side.
I'm sure he will.
His diplomacy skills are second to none. He kind of slyly looks over to see if he's insulted you or not.
Can we tell if, like, he's being sincere?
Oh, he's obviously making a joke.
Avok notes the sarcasm. And, well, I mean, yeah, I can be diplomatic in my own fashion, and out of the hole in the palm of his hand comes just a protruding spike, I guess.
So you guys watch, because you guys haven't seen this yet. You watch, he just kind of extend his hand and out, kind of pops just a, dagger-sized spike that looks kind of like bone, but a little bit too white, almost like bleached, sun-bleached bone. He just holds it in his hand, twirls it a little bit,
Whoa.
and you watch as the elder gnome just kind of mid-bite just goes,
Is that new?
Apparently.
It not hurt, does it?
It's weird, but I'm getting used to it. I spent a good portion of last night learning some things, I guess.
Huh.
I'll be sure not to upset you going forward. With that, I unfortunately need to leave you for a moment. I have my own rituals I must observe in the morning. I will see you all in a few moments. And he very politely kind of scoots his chair back and heads down the stairs and out of the tavern itself.
Okay.
So, what do you guys want to do?
Avok's gonna crush the dagger into brittle, so just to get rid of it. So.
You guys watch as the bone shard shatters. It kind of drops to the floor, and after about a minute or so, you see it kind of melt into the dust and then kind of get blown away.
Didn't know there was one in here.
There wasn't. It just happened.
A serpent brushing by, it just kind of moves in the wake of him. There you go.
It's magic.
Well, Kato, you can make us all wind again today?
Yeah, I will.
Wonderful. Let's not stop for strange roadside attractions this time.
Agreed.
They turn out to be dicks. We don't need that.
Yeah, it definitely cost us time.
Let's go to a dwarven city. Well, a gnomish city first, and then a dwarven city, but... Willow finishes up for breakfast and then starts prepping to go.
Okay. As you guys all start to come out of the tavern, the first thing that kind of draws your eye is you were kind of in like an open field area, and as you come out, you can see little bushes and flowers that you don't remember being there. And you see the elder gnome right next to them with a walking stick you don't remember him having before. And then your eyes immediately travel over to this very tall figure. It looks possibly human, in deep red armor and this massive double-ended sword-like weapon, just kind of casually talking to your gnomish friends, and as they both notice you, he kind of turns and smiles.
Gilmore, would you care to introduce us?
Oh. Go
Hi.
And before he can be introduced, the red armored figure kind of steps forward. I would prefer to introduce myself if you would allow me to be so bold. I am Kael, leader of my house, lord of my castle, and servant to my people, and I think one of them may have been somewhat rude to you yesterday after having his ass saved.
That one way of putting it, yes.
Yes, he's a third son of a minor noble house, and let's say he hasn't heard the word no very often. I regret that your first interaction with our people happened to be such a negative experience for you.
That's one way of putting it.
Again, my name is Kael. I'm actually leading one of the expeditions that was sent here to discover exactly what's been going on in the Kael Isles for the past few hundred years. If you'd be willing to speak with me about it, it would benefit my investigation.
I'll tell you what we know, though it's very, very long story.
This is.
If you wouldn't mind. Sorry, what was that, Dave?
I'm sorry. Do I trust this guy?
That was going to be one of my questions.
Go ahead and you can both make insight checks.
Nope.
Fuck.
10.
4.
Okay.
7.
Willow?
10.
All right. So, looking at this guy, the one thing that you all do kind of get from him, he does seem to be a noble in the idea that part of his upbringing is presenting himself how he wants to be viewed. So reading him is going to be very, very difficult. However,
familiar with the type.
brief amount of emotion you are able to glean from him, you don't sense any negative motives. But again, this is obviously someone who chooses their words very carefully.
I appreciate your apology, and I appreciate that this interaction is far more civil. Might I ask how you found us?
Well, I had his men tell me where they located you and have been searching for the past 2 hours, actually. Next time would be much easier if you used tents or something instead of a magical, mystical doorway that no one else can see. It's remarkably difficult to track that.
Idea. Yes.
But I saw your friend here and came down to ask if he'd seen the group described, and he was kind enough to inform me that you were the same group, and we had a short conversation before you came out.
Might I ask what your mission is?
Well, we noticed a large migration of feral dragons to the south out of our kingdom, and well, there are dragon migrations now and then. We haven't seen one quite so large. So we figured something must be happening, and as I believe you're aware, this area has been cut off from the world for hundreds of years. So I was sent here with another noble house to investigate and find out if this area was going to be a threat to us.
I see.
Thus far, things are, let's just say they don't look promising. If the dragons don't completely destroy your population, and you somehow are able to tame them before they kill you, it could be quite a force. Our previous treaty with Anethaway was stipulated that no dragons could be tamed and utilized by the people of the Kael Isles as a way to limit their ability to endanger other countries.
Just point of order. I recognize the name, and Willow does as well.
Yes, that's the name of the. That's what I hope I named the gold dragon.
That's what I thought. Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's Goldie. So
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
I'm glad you guys take better notes than I do.
There's a lot of letters and things in that name. It's hard enough without us.
Yeah, hopefully, so yeah, we can tell this guy what we know in the most abridged way we can think of.
I am not the. I mean, I could abridge stuff in the poorest possible way. The,
Uh,
What questions could we answer for you, Kael?
Well, I guess the biggest one is what the hell has been happening for the past about 600 years? Because, well, we had trade and we used the contact with the Feywild and the Shadowfell here for keeping abreast of our allies and other things like that. And, well, it was rather disruptive to lose that contact for centuries.
The short story is the former leadership of the Kael Isles grew a bit afraid of potential threats and sealed off the Isles and siphoned the life from his people to keep him alive
He's a
for a long
dragon.
time.
They almost
No,
immortal.
no.
no,
We don't
Dragon
know.
was out of the picture at this. Well, sort of, kind of, off to the side because he got imprisoned at some point by. Actually, I think we were a bunch of tieflings who did that to him at that time. But regardless, so yeah, Goldie was not in the picture at this point.
This was an Eladrin.
Yeah.
Originally a council, then a council of one.
Ladrin.
He went a little power mad.
We always did consider them a threat. Just never thought quite in that. Well, they are. I mean, their magic is impressive by any standards. Our Dragon Knights would be hard pressed to repel an Eladrin invasion if they brought the full power of their wizards and sorcerers to bear.
I don't think that is quite an issue at this point.
Well,
At least,
please
so,
take no offense at this, but they've already taken over one of the most valuable and resource-rich regions for 600 years.
Yes,
I think
a small number who are now gone.
that's my point. How many did it take to enslave an entire region? And how many more of them are in the Feywild?
You treat all things in absolutes then. Should all be punished for the sake of a few?
Well, I'm not saying they should be punished. I'm saying they could be dangerous.
So could all.
So could all. However, the ability to understand the possible dangers, new allies, or possibly enemies could present is a very important thing. And it can help drive negotiations. When two powers realize how dangerous they are to each other, sometimes peace is the best way to get rid of that danger. But peace would never be achieved if they both didn't realize exactly what it was they were facing. I mean, no disrespect to you or your friends or allies. I'm simply thinking aloud and admitting that they are a powerful people.
I mean, yes, they are strong, but I'm not scared of them. They cross me, I kick their ass.
It's a lovely refreshing viewpoint of the world if I've ever heard one.
Sorry, it's not fancy enough for you.
I simply made a jest. I apologize if it is offended.
Not offended, just noting the differences.
So did we mention that once the Council of One was defeated, the barrier went down and the dragons decided to move in?
Yes, what were you doing while the dragons were invading?
Actually, we not the Feywild.
Yeah, we sorry, go ahead.
Willow tries to shoot them both at the ends of maybe don't give away all of our secrets to a person we just met outside of our home.
Sorry.
And he kind of sees the discord among the group. If I've asked something personal, I apologize. I'm, again, just simply trying to discover what happened. I assumed with the power you all control, you must have had some part in the overthrower of this regime.
You could say that.
Are you familiar with the Sins?
Sorry, what'd you say?
The Sins? The 7 sins?
Oh,
I don't mean that metaphorically, I mean them as beings.
Well, remember hearing fairy tales, personifications of the mortal sins and virtues, but that's what I assumed they were, just stories to help explain why all the sins are as reprehensible or why the virtues should be strived to achieve. Why do you ask?
One of them appeared after the overthrowing of the Council of One, and impeded our ability to continue helping.
Interesting.
Quite frankly, they put a big a wrench into the plan. And by my estimation, are probably a bigger threat than anyone is talking about. So that would be something to report back and to focus on.
Well, to be honest, and please take no offense at this. We're not really worried that much about primitive belief structures and people adopting personifications of stories and fairy tales. I understand that these people must be relatively powerful.
Is your kingdom that fucking boring?
Ava, please. If I may, I've never been someone of faith myself. However, I'm not referring to fairy tales. I'm referring to beings who helped move through a place where you could not move through flames.
Oh.
That is a powerful magic and a dangerous one, and one worth discovering the cause of.
I'll have to report back to the high priest and see what he says, but centuries go. They're one of the legends that they tell young children to get them to go to sleep at nights were these personification of the sins battling and trying to cause mischief, and the first dragon knights used their power to smite them in the name of God, and well, that was all it took. So if I come back saying that not only is that not a legend, but that they're returning, his response is probably going to be simply to rely on our most powerful dragon knights.
Your choice of strategy is your own. I was merely trying to be of aid in the way you wished.
Appreciate that. Well, you obviously came back. Now you seem to be on some sort of mission. I assume that you're as displeased with these feral dragons as my people are?
In general, fucking right. Dragons suck.
Mm-hmm.
Do you not have any dragon tamers of your own?
Should we mess with Wayne?
What?
Wait.
Sorry, Kat, I didn't hear what you said.
I mean, Elaine doesn't tame an actual dragon, but he is considered a dragon knight.
Yes,
Yeah,
but I was not going to mention it.
You have heard him use both the terms dragon knight and dragon tamer as separate terms, so you can kind of assume that he means something different.
Okay.
But we have not had dragons here for quite some time, so no.
It is unsettling. Is there a formal government or organization here that we might negotiate with? We have dragon tamers and dragon knights. We could send them down here for a fee that we could conclude later, possibly, to help you get these dragons under control, and we could bring them back to our homeland where we could use them and utilize their skills in the best way possible, as opposed to simply slaughtering them all, which is a viable solution, but tends to be somewhat wasteful when there are quite a few uses for a strong dragon, especially if you get them when they're young.
You do have point.
To be honest, I don't know if a government's been formed from the time we were forced away.
As far as I'm aware, it's free for all in this fucking hellhole.
I would love to have an answer for you.
Sorry, I zoned out for a couple seconds there. Really sorry. What did you say?
That I'd love to have an answer for him, but we don't know. We don't know who's going to take charge.
It's somewhat upsetting. If there's not a group here to take control of the region, we may have no choice but to install governor or something here until something can be done. This land is far too important to leave on its own, and the three kingdoms would probably jump at the prospect of being able to own this region. Sanguinius itself would quite literally kill to get control of the portal to the Shadowfell.
Oh, yeah, that no good.
And we will do everything in our power to make sure that the Isles stay free.
And you see now he's just kind of standing back and kind of talking to himself almost. Possibly we could send a representative to the three kingdoms and come to some sort of agreement and have maybe a joint force come in and install a protectorate or so. Oh, I apologize. Just trying to come up with a solution for this.
Yeah, you ain't colonizing shit, okay?
It's not a colonization. It's simply someone here to help to direct this land to the point where it can govern itself. Neither kingdoms or any of the kingdoms really would accept anyone controlling these islands. It simply creates too much of a power imbalance. However, dragons, if left to their own devices, they will breed, they will multiply, and they will not only overrun this region, they will become a problem for everyone. They must be dealt with swiftly.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us a moment?
Oh, certainly. If you have any questions for me, you're more than welcome to answer. Obviously, I can't give away state secrets, but anything up to that point, I am an open book.
No,
Thank you. Huddle.
We step back into the tavern.
Mm-hmm.
Like, leave it open so you can see that we're not disappearing, but there's no sound passing through.
Do you bring your gnome friend as well?
If he wants to come, he's welcome to.
He seems rather content to just be outside with his stick. You see him peel a little piece of bark on it and just start kind of chewing it absent-mindedly.
Okay. So we step inside.
He has point about dragons.
I don't think he's bad, but I do not trust him.
I don't either.
He's better than the last dragon knight we saw.
True, but that one at least was honest in what his intentions were.
Mm-hmm.
When you're good at hiding things, I don't trust it.
Yeah, we definitely should not bring anyone he sends to HQ.
Right. I feel like I should send a message to the Prince Consort and let him know
Mm-hmm. Yes.
that they're here. I suppose ask if they want us to send them their way, but I don't think that's a good idea, because if they think the Empress is staking a claim here, that will create worse. No, I don't believe that she is. I do believe she's here to help. But I don't know if we can say that and have anyone else believe us.
Yeah, unfortunately, schmucks like these think there's always some ulterior motive.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean,
It's getting harder and harder to trust strangers nowadays.
Sure. Well, actually,
Yeah, and I don't think anyone he sent would get along with Cassian.
what was that? Won't get along with
Cassian. They would start trying to tame him as soon as they figured out, oh wait, he's an Emerald Dragon. Let's get him back.
I'm pretty sure douchebag Green Boy is smart enough to hide himself.
Yeah, true.
I don't know. We could write this guy. I mean, I don't know. This
Willow looks at
what?
Dad.
I'm sorry. No, what were you gonna say?
I was going to say Willow looks at Fade and asks him, since he's closer to the Prince Consort, to cast sending and send the message of this guy showed up. He's asking questions. Do you want us to send him to you or not mention you at all?
Fade waits for a moment and then basically repeats the message he got verbatim from the Prince Consort, which is basically the Imperium is difficult to deal with. Be best if they don't know about them just yet.
What the fuck are we supposed to do then?
We back at square one.
We just say that we have no further answers and we have to be on our way. We're on a tight schedule. That's all. We're under no obligation to answer anything more than him.
Suddenly you see Fade just kind of look up for a second, then out of nowhere he said, I'll let them know. And he turns to you guys. Concert did mention wouldn't be a bad idea to get a little or as much info from him that we can.
Right. Talk to somebody who knows how to hide things.
Well,
Tell me.
even just basic history for the past 600 years could influence the negotiation prospects later.
True.
Fine.
What do we want to know?
I guess we can, I don't know, ask him about his home's story, like why they are as douchey as they are.
Maybe,
I'm not sure
Maybe
that'd
I'll
be a great idea. I mean, everyone has own faith. Yeah, probably not, like, it's probably rude to butt in that.
I agree, and we should all be allowed to have our own. Or not.
They can have their faith for all I care, just don't frickin' shove it down my throat.
Exactly. Or determine that, and she kind of looks at Fade, that what we believe is not allowed. That's not okay. Okay. Well, we'll ask a few questions and then we'll go. We have places to be.
Go right ahead, or speak better than both of us.
Anything you want to ask, and I'll ask it in a nicer way?
I love that Willow just automatically knows, yeah, maybe we shouldn't have Avok asking questions.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how long they plan to investigate before they decide to get trigger happy?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay. How long they intend on being here? How best to interact with them so that we don't have any misunderstandings. Yep, okay. Let's start there. So, She looks around to make sure everybody's ready to step back outside.
Mm.
Right ahead.
All right. Thank you for waiting.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It is a lovely day. Where I come from, my particular, my particular area that I rule over is covered in snow for about half the year, and when it's not, it's pleasant. Don't get me wrong, but we don't get temperatures like this or an ocean in front of us. We're rather landlocked. So this has been very nice.
Quick, out of character question: Would Avok have encountered snow in any time of his life?
You do get snow in the Platinum City and in the far south. The equator kind of runs through this center of the Kael Isles. But once you get to the extremes, like Ordinier gets snow every winter.
Okay, good. Then
It's not like a ton, but you can have a white, winter solstice.
Right, I know what snow is, so I gotcha. All right, continue.
Kind of think like northern Georgia or that part of the U.S. where they do get some snow, just not the frozen north of Wisconsin.
Sounds quite different. Oh, would you be there long investigating, I guess?
We're supposed to return as soon as possible. We have a ship that's moored about half a mile off of the northern coast of this island, far enough away that we haven't been bothered by anyone. And it will take us, with the additional speed of having multiple Dragon Knights on board, you probably make the trip in a week. It took us, with favorable winds, we got here in about a 10-day. And we've been investigating ever since, but I'm trying to wrap up the investigation. It's not safe for us to be as spread out as we are, especially with the size of some of these feral dragons. A single dragon knight against an adult dragon will not fare well. Even our most powerful would have issues taking an adult dragon down themselves.
I should think so.
My hope is, through our conversation, I can get enough of a lay of the land that I can report back to the high priest and have enough information between myself and the other team for him to make a decision on what to do moving forward.
Forgive my ignorance. Is your high priest the leader of your nation?
Yes. He alone interprets the will of God and directs the Imperium in a way that is most pleasing. And it has helped us to thrive in an area that many thought uninhabitable. So.
Well, I'm happy for that for you. Has there been one high priest in the time that we've been cut off, or many? I'm not familiar.
Oh, well, the high priest is generally human.
Okay.
So they do tend to live longer than most, but we're talking maybe 100 years. We had one, Gregory the second. He lived for 137 years, but he had to give up his position at high priest around 124, as he simply couldn't take the strain of running the entire Imperium.
I see. I must admit, even here, that is old for a human, given, as I mentioned, our leader was quite literally removing life force from the people.
Well, when you're given a directive from God himself to run a country, he will keep you well enough to do it until he provides a replacement. And that particular time period was a bit of unrest. We had quite a few issues in declaring a new high priest. So.
Is there anything we should be aware of if we run into more of your people, things to avoid, any misunderstandings?
Prefer if you don't try to kill us. Obviously, that hasn't happened yet, but we've had some somewhat negative interactions with a group. They called themselves the Black Sail, I believe.
Oh,
They were less than hospitable. Rather impressive sailing techniques.
Yes.
Probably one of the best crewed ships I'd seen in a very long time, but again, I don't get out on the sea much. We unfortunately they forced our hand, and we were forced to capsize the ship. The few that survived, we really didn't have the ability to take any prisoners. We left them on an island that seemed to have resources enough to keep them fed, but we did take any weapons that they could use to attack us again. Left them, enough to survive, obviously. But
What island did she leave him on?
Unfortunately, I do not know.
To the north of here, near where your ship is now, or to the east?
It was more southeast of where the ship is, a little northeast of where we are currently. It was a small-ish island, had vegetation on it. Not the very large one in the center. We discovered very quickly there's... that's another issue entirely.
Yes.
But they seem to be contained by the water.
Okay.
That
Helpful.
I wouldn't presume to tell you how to deal with your own problems, but having seen incidents like that before, fire is a very useful tool when the infestation gets that bad.
Good
on our
future. Yep.
However, if again, all of this is hinged on the idea that the danger present in the Kael Isles remains confined to the Kael Isles. If we see a threat to the Imperium, we will have no choice but to defend ourselves.
Might I ask what you would define as a threat so we can avoid that situation?
Well, a giant army of undead escaping that island would be a threat.
Fair enough. Like I said, it's on our list. Well, she kind of looks around at the group. Do you have other questions? I know we are on a time schedule.
I got nothing.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. I hope that next time we meet, it will be under more pleasant circumstances. And if you ever do find yourself in the Imperium, please come to my land. It's again, it's in the northwest, actually, very near the mountains. It's the Duchy of Cordian. That's my family name, by the way.
Cordian?
Cordian.
Oh, okay.
As I'm the Duke there, in addition to my duties as a Dragon Knight.
Well, it has been a pleasure meeting you. I'm Willow, I realize, but not introduce myself, but
That was
she holds out her hand.
And he seems a little bit taken aback at first, but he does kind of grasp it and give a very curt bow. You're very different manners here. It's very interesting.
How so? Did
Well,
I do something unusual?
Not really. I don't know the customs here. The traditional greeting where I'm from, noble men don't generally touch noble women or anything. It's considered somewhat rude, so we tend to bow without grasping hands or anything. It's considered somewhat intimate. So, implies more of a relationship than you and I have so far.
I see. Well, I have certainly never been called a noblewoman, so I thank you for that, but I shall keep that in mind.
Like I said, your customs are perfectly fine. I mean no disrespect. It was just new for me is all. We can be somewhat conservative in our views on interaction between, people in general. To be perfectly honest, it is somewhat annoying to be in the nobility sometimes. The peasants in the lower class are not quite nearly as formal.
Maybe you should work on that.
Well, it's served our people for a very long time.
Doesn't hurt to update.
Well, I personally, to take pride in treating women with respect and dignity. While I understand it would be easier to be a little more lax, there's a certain nobility, to use the right word, in treating people as if they are pristine and worthy of the utmost respect and dignity.
I don't know. I'd rather just treat someone as equal.
Well, to each their own. Like I said, if we do, or when we do, to be honest, reestablish relations between the Kael Isles and the Imperium, we'll obviously have to learn each other's customs and things like that to facilitate better relationships between our two kingdoms.
I appreciate the sentiment.
Thank you.
Well, and he goes into a very deep bow. And when he comes up, I thank you for all the information. I, again, apologize for one of my men. If I could chastise him, I would, but then I'd have to deal with his mother. And well, let's just say I'd prefer to fight the dragon.
That is confusing, but good to know. Thank you.
And he turns around, and you watch him just kind of leap, and wings sprout from his back, and he starts flying off. And
Oh.
you suddenly hear kind of a chuckle from this brand new kind of grove that, now that you guys can look, has just been growing and flourishing. Now there's like berry bushes. There's a short little stump of a tree that never was there. You don't know where that stump came from, but you just see your gnomish friend just kind of relaxing, going, "That was entertaining to watch." And it is nice that I don't have to hide this anymore. Ladrin gets so upset when I used it.
This is lovely. She goes and picks a berry off a bush and looks to make sure it's safe to eat before she does.
I would be somewhat careful with that. They make a beautiful pie, but they are quite tart.
Safe?
What would you say?
But safe.
Oh, perfectly safe, but don't say I didn't warn you.
She pops one in her mouth anyway.
Yeah. It is the single most sour thing you've ever tasted.
Yikes.
Your entire face kind of puckers in on itself. But you do, at the very end, you do taste this very kind of strong, kind of citrusy flavor. But it's like your tongue hurts. If you've ever had something so sour, it actually stings your tongue. It is a very exhilarating experience. You could definitely see making a drink with this.
That is exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
She takes just a couple to play with later.
And you could also see some of the more basic bar connoisseurs that had come to your bar before using this as some sort of challenge. See who could eat more of them.
What are you practiced in the druidic craft?
Well, yes, I was gifted with a connection to nature from a very young age, but my very wise parents helped me to hide it and kind of mask it somewhat. Made it look more bardic in its casting, and I was able to be utilized as a healer for the Eladrin when they came through. I think a few of them could tell that it was nature magic, but as long as I was useful and didn't flaunt it, they didn't do anything to me. It's actually how I met my husband. He, well, let's just say he's not very into the more mystical sides of life. He's much more physical, and I was performing some tricks for some friends when I was a young man, and one thing led to another, and an Eladrin that didn't recognize me started coming over and looked to be ready to start something, and without missing a beat, my eventual husband came over to me, looked me straight in the face, came very, very close, and you could just see in his eyes this look that I knew I could trust him with anything. And as soon as I recognized that, he punched me in the face. And we got into a brawl, and a couple of Ladrin broke it up, and he got thrown in the stocks for a day, and I was able to deny any knowledge of it because, unfortunately, our little scuffle just happened to destroy the little plants I'd been growing for my friends. Very wise one, my husband, though not a man of words. Let's say a man of action. But he probably saved my life, or at least ensured that it continued in the direction it was going. We were basically inseparable from that point. He would break things, and I would fix them. Very handy skill to have.
Someday I hope to meet him.
Oh, you will. He's down there. He's probably cooking up a storm for when we get back. That's his other little passion. He doesn't tend to tell too many people about it, but he is a phenomenal cook and has just an amazing palate. He can taste a dish once and know every ingredient in it.
I would love to pick his brain.
Well, you have the chance just as soon as we get down there. Speaking of which, I've annoyed you with enough tales from this old man now. We should probably get going. And you see him kind of get up and he uses his walking stick. You see him just kind of poke the ground with it. It's like, it's very nice to have this back. I haven't been allowed to use one of these in 20 years. Damn, a lad can get jumpy when you start having sticks and things.
So, should I do the thing now?
That's all.
I meant, is it okay to do a walk now?
Go right ahead.
Okay. Here's it.
So you guys watch as again Kata starts channeling her druidic energy. And again, Kata, you feel something strange. This has happened a few times before where as you sit there and focus on just the natural magic coursing through you, you suddenly feel drawn out of your bodies somewhat. But not so much taken out as your consciousness seems to be spreading further than just inside your body. You're drawn into the air around you. You can feel wind currents. You can sense the birds flying around you and everything, and you just feel completely filled with the air around you. And suddenly you guys watch as Kata starts to rise off the ground a little bit, and then you watch as her hands start to become more translucent, and then her arms, and then her whole body, and you all start feeling this kind of wind lift you, and you watch as your bodies slowly disappear until you are made entirely of air.
So we know the path from here?
Yeah, you're basically going south, and the area you're looking for has been described to you, so you won't know for certain when you get there, but
Gimmel's leading the way.
Mm-hmm.
Because he knows the way, so we're good.
And you guys start flying.
We didn't leave Fade behind, did we?
What?
We didn't leave Fade behind, did we?
No.
No, Fade's with you. He's just silent.
Okay.
So you guys lift in the air and you start flying incredibly fast. As you start out close to the ground, it's almost nauseating how fast you go. But as you climb higher and higher, and there are less things flying directly underneath you, it becomes more bearable. And you can see more of this part of the island. You, as you guys fly over, you do see the remnants of old wood elven settlements that had obviously been sacked and ravaged. You see a few ruins that are almost completely overgrown to the point where if it wasn't for the fact that you don't have anything else to do but kind of look at the ground and follow your gnomish friend, you wouldn't have noticed it, but obviously there are more signs of civilization in this area than the Eladrin would have led you to believe. But they were ancient. And after about 6 hours, you sense that your gnomish friend has kind of slowed down and started descending. And you get to a part of the island where you basically get forest going directly up to kind of rocky outcroppings and things like that. The beach area and that has become very rocky for probably about 2 or 3 miles from the ocean. You have just crags and rocks and things like that. I can't remember, Avok, when you were traveling, did we talk about whether you'd gone all the way south to like Amenbel or Sophalis? The southernmost city on Kael?
Me or
You.
Wait.
You. It's been a long time since we talked about your character's backstory. I couldn't remember if we mentioned you'd been this far south.
I don't think so.
Okay. You probably would have heard at least rumors about this city of Sophalis itself is basically built. It's these little kind of almost islands that are built on these crags and rocks with bridges and things linking them, and it tends to rain a lot, almost constantly. It's either overcast or raining, and so it's this very kind of darkish city. And now that you're getting further south, you're starting to understand that kind of mentality. The trees themselves, you see the leaves getting much more waxy and resilient against the constant rain. And you guys can actually feel the kind of colder waves of wind. And suddenly the elder gnome just kind of rushes straight down into a crag that is very, very deep. The two sides of it, you can see these kind of outcropping of rocks that look almost as if a giant hammer had just slammed into the ground there and shattered it and forced parts of it to just stick up at odd angles. And he kind of disappears in this crag that even from like ground level, you can't see the bottom of it. It just disappears into the darkness.
Yep, we follow.
Okay. So as you guys go deeper and deeper, you start to feel your wind-based bodies getting heavier and heavier as the moisture in the air starts to kind of cling to you and weigh your body down to the point where you eventually actually start condensing somewhat, and you guys can actually notice clouds flying around. So now your forms are not completely invisible. You're little clouds. And as you get further down, you do see another little cloud just kind of circling around, looking like it's waiting for you.
All right.
And as you follow him, he leads you into this cave, and as you keep going down the cave, there's this kind of underground river that you guys find that you keep following. And every twist and turn of this river, you start seeing walls of the cave that seem almost metallic, with just the vast sheen that they have on them. You see veins of precious metals and stones down here. It almost feels like you're going into the core of the planet itself. and eventually you get to an area that is the first place that seems to be manufactured instead of just naturally formed. Like the ground is flat, the walls are carved, obviously, and there's a kind of archway that leads to a tunnel that you can't fully see down yet. And you hear the sounds of people on the other side of this doorway, and you see your gnomish friend start to coalesce into his human shape, or his gnomish shape. And the rest of you do too.
Yeah, follow suit.
Okay. So you all kind of coalesced, and he comes up to you and goes, "Well, let me go first. We have had some issues with some wildlife attacking. They're a little jumpy, and if they see people they don't recognize, let's say we don't want an accident.
Absolutely.
I'll call for you in just a few moments."
Okay.
Okay.
And you see him kind of walk off, and you hear a loud crash, and then you hear, "Jeez! What in the world are you doing? It's me!" "No, don't apologize. Don't do it again. That rock nearly crushed my head. I have friends, allies." "No, they're not spies. There's no one for them to spy for. Just shut up. Don't throw more rocks." You see him kind of come out. "Everything's perfectly fine. Come with me. May want to duck."
Okay.
And you guys go into this relatively small area. And as you go through, you eventually come out after about 20 feet into this massive cavern, probably the size of the underground city underneath Olgoth. You don't know how far down you are, but the ceiling raises at least 200 to 250 feet. It seems that you guys realize you're underground and there should be no light, but you can see there these glowing stones kind of imprinted into this ceiling itself that make it look like an eternal starry sky. And then you also see these orbs that are attached to like pedestals in various places that grow relatively brightly, much like a sunrod, but not quite as fierce, and they grow this kind of light blue. And as you come in, you see a bunch of dwarves with weapons ready, and then you see a few gnomes with wands and other things just prepared and ready. And as you finally get in, you just see your gnomish friend go, "Oh, for the gods, put your weapons away. Besides, I've seen them fight. You'll lose." You see a dwarf come up. "Aye, how are we supposed to trust these just random people that just walk into our area? They're not random people. I brought them with me. They came with me. How is this?" And he just kind of comes over and he goes right into Avok's chest because he's shorter than you. "All right, you. Who do you think you are?"
I'm Avok.
"I kind of a big. I'm going to go talk to her." And he kind of turns around and goes to Willow. "Aye," and he's actually about 4 inches taller than you. "Who do you think you are?" And not as
My
tall.
name's Willow. Nice to meet you.
This isn't quite the confrontation I was expecting. You're not very good at this whole, like, I say, who do you think you are? And then you fire a line back, and we both draw weapons, and it's a big epic battle, and then we all get drinks afterwards.
Oh, we can do the drinks. I'm very good at making them.
You hear another one. I like that one. Let's keep her. Oh, toss off. You drunk enough as he is. I'm Galen, and I run the defences here for our city. And you hear your friend go, it's not a city, we're refugees. Barely got the lights turned on. She knows more about this area than you do. I'm going to go get a drink. And he kind of wanders off.
Right.
So very sorry for just... They haven't had anything to do since we got down here, and they tend to think with their axes, and...
Whatever.
Let me show you what it is we need your help with, and then after you get a good look at it, you can come back to my cave, I guess we can call it, for a meal.
Wonderful.
All right.
And so he kind of takes you guys through this kind of massive, for lack of a better word, city. They have... obviously ruins here of something. You're not sure what used to be here, but they've been using them to create makeshift huts and cooking pits and things like that. You see a lot of fish around there, and a few birds you can't identify, mostly because they're plucked and being roasted. And after going for about 20 minutes getting through all this thing, and he says hello to almost every person he sees, you eventually come to a door with runes inscribed on it that you don't recognize. Or you can't translate, but you do kind of recognize them because they look very similar to the writing all of you but Willow saw in Dom Doral. And you can see the door itself seems to be kind of propped open by a kind of makeshift doorstop thing. The door itself is this incredibly heavy-looking stone door.
I pull out a copy that I made of the map that they showed me that they found last time and compare it and try and understand it. And if that doesn't work, I'll cast Comprehend Languages.
Well, this is just the doorway. You're not at the actual gateway. It's in...
Or I thought you were saying there were letters around it.
There is, but they don't show up on the map. The map is basically constellations on a couple different wheels that on the original map actually physically you can turn them.
Oh, sure. I was just thinking of like comparing them and seeing if there were similar runes or such things.
There's not really any runes on the map. It's just the symbols.
Fair enough.
So he kind of points you in, and as you guys go in, again, you get through this very narrow hallway. This one doesn't look carved. It looks caved in, to be honest. You guys have to kind of duck and weave your way through passages that look recently cleared, and eventually get to this room that's about a 30 by 30 foot cube. Though you can see collapses and other things like that have damaged the room. It's not perfect. And at the far end of the room, kind of stuck into the wall, you see the giant ring with those symbols you see on the map. and a little bit, about 20 feet in front of it, you see this pedestal that just rises out of the ground there, that also has those symbols and a bunch of stones laid on it that make the shape of the different constellations on the map.
Hmm. This is fascinating.
So, anything you guys want to do while you're here? Or do you want to go for dinner?
I more look around and like attempt to understand this. I mean, they were here before, and the other one I was not, so they might know how it works better than I do. But
Well, go ahead and make me an intelligence check.
that's a natural 20.
Hey!
So,
No.
looking around, the first thing you kind of notice is looking at the map and the pedestal and everything together in the room itself. You kind of look around, you notice the room has a similar pattern as the city outside, where there's stones in the ceiling that kind of shine like the night sky. Obviously, this room has been collapsed, so it's missing large parts of it. But you kind of go to the center of the room and just lie on your back, and you instantly go, "Oh, that's that constellation. That's that one." You kind of are taken back to kind of stargazing as you were a young child, and then again on the top of your tavern with your daughter. You know, little bits you could see that weren't blacked out by the upper city.
Sure. Beautiful.
And looking around, you look at the pedestal and you try pressing a few things. You do notice as you press certain constellations, they start to glow. But as you kind of futz with it, nothing happens other than things will glow and then they'll stop glowing eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a large red gem in the center that every time you touch it, everything that was glowing will glow just a slight bit brighter for a second, and then everything disappears.
So it has to be a specific order or a combination or something. Interesting.
You do kind of get the idea that this isn't going to be like a quick, fill in the blank. This will probably take a little bit of time for research and experimentation.
Oh, sure. She's just excited to have something that's a fun challenge for her anyway.
You do, being so familiar with a Ladrin tech, you do notice that this is obviously magical, but the way this magic works is completely different from how Ladrin magic works. And it seems to you with a nat 20, the magic for this device comes specifically from the stones set in it. And this whole thing, you've never actually studied dwarven magic, but from what you can perceive here, it is entirely precious stone based. It seems like they infuse these precious stones with magic and then use it to create devices, and this device specifically. But it's all the magical energy for it comes directly from the stones itself, which is different from Eladrin, which they just kind of imbue arcane energy into items, but it generally the energy comes from a caster somewhere. If that makes sense. It's scary how much work I've put into designing different systems of magic.
Nice.
So your gnomish friend kind of sits back, and as you're kind of touching it, he goes, "It's magical, isn't it?"
Yes, it is.
For years, we were not allowed to even think about dwarven magic and dwarven technology. Yes, they use them to create their underwater farms and things like that, but everywhere else it was completely discouraged, and yet here is an entire facility that was built using something the Aladdin couldn't control. It's simply astounding.
Yes, indeed.
Well, you're probably very hungry. Let's head back to my little cave. You can meet my husband, and we can go from there. It's fairly late. I know it's hard to tell the time underground, but we've gotten a little bit used to it. It's getting very, very close to dinner time and then bedtime. So,
Quite alright.
anything else you guys want to do before you leave this area? Yep. So as you guys go to leave, he again kind of takes you through winding paths and over chasms and things like that. You eventually come to this. It's hard to call it a cave. It's more of like an indent in the cave wall that they've built onto and created some stuff. And you see a short gnome, very kind of stocky, or very lean and muscular, kind of solid muscle, not a whole lot of fat. And you see him just kind of wandering around with a very kind of trimmed beard and mustache. And you see him preparing something over a fire. He looks over, and you see his face soften for a second, and then he sees you, and he gets this scowl, and he kind of drops what he's doing and just walks over. And even though he's barely over 3 feet, there's just this kind of presence behind him as he walks towards you. "Hello there, darling. Lovely to see you." And he just holds up a hand, crosses his arms. "Who are you?" "Well, these are my new..." And he just holds his hand up and looks directly at Willow. "Who are you?"
My name is Willow.
He kind of looks at you and he nods. He turns to Kata. "Who are you?"
Hello, I Kata.
He kind of looks you up and down, nods, turns to Avok, and you see his expression change slightly. He steps forward a little. "Who are you?"
Avok, who are you?
And with that, you feel just the tiniest kind of tickle on the back of your neck, and you recognize your danger sense kind of kicking in as he explodes forward with his punch coming right at you. Go ahead and roll me a dex saving throw.
Mm-hmm. 18.
Okay. You can see the punch coming towards. He's actually leaping up a little bit, so it's gonna. Looks like it's going to hit you right in the face. What do you want to do? Okay, so he comes up, and as he sits there and he throws the punch, you just kind of catch it. He immediately flips around, and you see a kick coming right at your ear. much faster than you think should be possible. He's going to actually roll for this. He rolled a 3. So just as quickly, you kind of let go of the fist and just move your hands slightly, and it connects there. And he lands on the ground in a fighting stance. And just kind of sits there waiting for you to do something. And you hear, you know, Miss Friend, really, do we have to go through this? And he just holds a hand up.
Husband?
And he just, you see him with his head in his hand, shaking it.
Oh, boy. Alright, dude, I mean, I'm not gonna turn this down. Let's go.
So what do you do?
Hey, he's asking for it.
So what do you do? He's still just standing there in a fighting stance. At about, like, your stomach is where his head comes up to.
Alright, I guess I'll tackle him to the ground.
Okay. Make me a strength athletics check.
Okay.
Dear God.
There you are. 25.
So as you sit there and you go forward, you watch him, and as soon as you start to make contact, you feel him just very lightly kind of grab your arm and place another hand on your shoulder, and you can feel him redirecting your momentum, and you're starting to kind of shift because he's going to put you in an arm bar with what he's doing. So you're starting to shift and make sure he can't. You suddenly hear this pop, and his hands stop. Your forward momentum doesn't, and you just collide with him and smash him into the ground.
I'm just gonna pin him.
He's not moving.
Yeah.
And you see your no much friends go, see, what did I tell you? You are not who you used to be. You can't be picking fights with people like, look at him. I mean, just, and you've thrown, and he kind of comes over and you feel him kind of lifting your arm, trying to get you off of him.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of raises Eva's hand inventory.
And he comes over and you watch him start conjuring some healing magic, and he places it on the small of his back. Told you that slipped disc is not healed yet. You can't be picking fights with people twice your size. I could have taken him if it hadn't been for that damn injury. And you see him just kind of pouting. I've told you time and time again, a simple handshake and a hello can teach you a lot more than punching someone. True warrior learns more about a person through combat than he will ever learn through talking. And they just seem to be having an argument they've had many times before. Finally turns around. This is my husband. He is very thick-headed, but he's wonderful. These are my friends. This is Kat and Willow, you've already met. Obviously, you know Avok intimately now. And he kind of nods towards you, and as he gets up, you see him kind of rubbing his lower back. Must be here for dinner. Yes, because you always make plenty. You could have told me you were bringing guests for dinner. Told you I've been here for a total of 10 minutes. We went to the gateway room. We came here. What more could you have done in 10 minutes? It's simply polite to tell your husband when you are bringing guests for dinner. And suddenly he catches himself and he kind of turns and he seems much warmer now. I apologize for the rudeness of my husband. Please come in. I have just made a lovely stew and some fresh baked bread. It would be
Wonderful.
our honor for you to break bread with us.
And I'm sorry, I did not catch your name.
Oh, my name is Bynon.
Fine. A pleasure.
You look familiar. You?
Oh?
Yes, you had a drink. No one else in the entire Platinum City could make. What was the drink? There was fruit in it. I know you. I was only in your tavern once, but I never forgot it.
Well, I'd be happy to make you one now if you'd like.
Lovely. Come, let us eat. And before you pass him, Avok, he kind of just looks at you and goes, "You're a warrior." And just kind of goes in. And that is where we are going to end it for tonight. Thank you to everybody that tuned in. It hopefully was a lot of fun for you. Unfortunately, we're missing Fade due to IRL stuff he had to deal with. Hopefully, next time he'll be back. If you missed any of the episode, I do upload all these to my YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/TraderJody. Otherwise, that's all for me today, and I'll see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye.
Bye.